I was also asked to bring an artefact, and I brought a book. And I was also, I guess I wanted to talk about a project which I thought was relevant to the theme, called Do It Yourself Park. And it's a slight tangent, so hopefully by the time I get to the end of the anecdote, it makes some sense as to why I think it's relevant to the theme. Some time ago, when I was in Melbourne, I was asked to do a public realm strategy for a park on a public housing estate, but a suburban one. And the problem was the Residents Association and the Housing Association wanted people to use the green space on the park more, but at the same time they were concerned about misbehaviour and illicit use of space on the edges of the housing estate. Why I'm holding this up will become clear shortly. That project became a project that we called Do It Yourself Park, and that was partly because the first place we started was trying to understand why the children's misbehaviour was a problem. And I just want to read something out of this book to contextualise that, if I can find the spot. So, I hope you all know who Colin Ward is, and I really love this book, The Child in the City. But the quote that I'm reading is from Patrick Geddes and written in 1915. He's talking about children in cities and parks. But the children, they are at most granted a cricket pitch or lent a space between football goals, but otherwise are jealously watched as potential savages who, on the least symptom of their natural activities of wigwam building, den creation and cave digging and so on, must instantly be chivied away and are lucky if not handed over to the police. Now, if the writer has learned anything from a life occupied with nature study and education, it is that these two need to be brought together through nature activities. But we have been stamping out the very germs of these by our policeman-like repression, both in school and out of it, of these natural, he says boyish, I say childish, instincts of vital self-education, however clumsy and awkward, or even mischievous and destructive, as they commonly have been and still too much are. It's primarily for a lack of this touch of first-hand rustic experience that we've forced young energy into hooliganism, or even worse, depressed it below that level. And later on in this chapter, Adapting the Imposed Environment, Colin Ward says that the concept of the adventure playground grew out of observation of what children actually did on patches of wasteland and on derelict areas and bomb sites. The project eventually became a mapping of children's activities on wasteland around the housing estate. And what we discovered was that den building, cubby making and other sorts of construction, the use of dustbins, wheelie bins to transport transport materials from one place to another, and as a highlight, a fully carpeted tree constructed out of carpet remnants that were tacked onto a tree, was really a representation of the creativity of children. The Do-It-Yourself Park really came out of an attempt to say that the project didn't need a park, but that the space of the estate was already being used. And in that sense, do-it-yourself or self-made was a response or a provocation rather than something that needed to be constructed. I think that Colin Ward's other writings on housing are a good relationship to draw back to the idea of the self-made in housing. And I also think that perhaps the moral of this story is that the valuing of aesthetics which don't fit, the valuing of rules and regulations that don't necessarily make sense, but particularly the aesthetics of self-build, the aesthetics of the badly made, are the things that we need to counter. The idea that children misbehave, the idea that what we make is unsightly, is part of the problem that we need to address in the issue of how we could value the self-built and the self-made in our cities. Thank you.